Hey everyone, I'm Whit Yost, bicycling's pro cycling pundit, and it's July, which means it's time to talk about the Tour de France. Now, the Tour de France, it's a long-standing event, over 100 years running, which means there's lots of rules and traditions, which can make it pretty complicated for folks maybe watching it for the first or second time. But don't worry, because I'm here to go over lots of facts so you can sit back, relax, and enjoy the race with your friends. First off, the Tour de France is huge. 3.5 billion people in 190 countries watch the race each year. That makes it the world's third largest sporting event. For comparison's sake, only about 114 million people watch the NFL Super Bowl each year. The race started in 1903, and it's only been interrupted twice for both world wars, which caused the cancellation of 11 different editions. The devastation in France after World War II was so bad, in fact, that it was 2 years after the war ended that the tour restarted again. This year's tour marks the 100th anniversary of perhaps the tour's most iconic symbol, the maillot jaune, or otherwise the yellow jersey, which represents the leader of the tour's general classification and is awarded to that rider at the end of each day's stage. The yellow jersey was believed to have originated as a way to honor l'Auto, which was the French sporting newspaper that originally was the main sponsor of the race. L'Auto was printed on yellow paper, and so it was believed that the yellow jersey was created as a way to honor their support of the race. In addition to the yellow jersey, there are 3 other jerseys awarded at the end of each stage. First, there's the green jersey, which is given to the current leader of the tour's points classification. Then there's the polka dot jersey, a white jersey with red polka dots that goes to the leader of the tour's King of the Mountains classification. Lastly, there's the white jersey, which goes to the leader of the Best Young Rider competition, a classification that honors the best placed GC rider under the age of 26. A lot of people wonder, how do they get those jerseys so fast? After all, within about 15 minutes of a stage ending, the riders come up to the podium and boom, they're given a brand new yellow, green, polka dot, or white jersey with their sponsors on it, and it just so happens to fit perfectly. Well, believe it or not, there's a van that follows the race every day that has the ability to print jerseys in about 10 minutes. So each rider is going to look sharp on the podium each day. When the tour started back in 1903, bikes weighed about 40 pounds. In fact, the winner in 1903, his bike came in at about 39.7 pounds, which is about more than double the amount of what most bikes today weigh. They also weren't allowed to receive outside support, so if you got a flat tire in the tour back in 1903, you had to change it yourself, no help whatsoever. Riders today, however, each team has 2 cars following the race. Each rider gets a spare bike, lots of wheels, a mechanic sitting in the back seat with a full toolkit ready to jump out and help him with whatever he needs, and a cooler with fresh drinks and snacks ready to be handed up to them with a moment's notice. Riders can win some big money at the tour. The rider who wins the general classification takes home 500,000 euro. That's about 560,000 US dollars. That said, it doesn't all go to them. They divide that among the other riders in the race with them, other members of the team, and the team staff. Who's won the most Tour de France titles? Well, it depends who you ask and whether or not you count riders who won tours only to have those wins vacated after the fact. For example, Lance Armstrong, he won 7 tours, but after he admitted to doping, all of those wins were stricken from the record. That leaves 4 riders as the official record holders for most tour victories. They've each won 5. Jacques Anquetil, Eddy Merckx, Bernard Hinault, and Miguel Indurain. Incidentally, this year's tour is also the 50th anniversary of Merckx's first Tour de France victory in 1969. 21 stages in 3 weeks with 2 rest days. Now, the riders aren't going to spend those rest days with their feet up, at least not for the entire time. After several days of intense competition, like the riders encounter in a stage race, they need to keep their bodies functioning in a way that simulates the races itself. So they'll actually go out on a rest day for a ride of 2 to 3, some of them maybe even 4 hours, because they don't want their bodies to think the race is over and therefore start shutting down. So why is there no women's Tour de France? It's a great question. There actually was an official women's Tour de France in the 1980s. Unfortunately, it was short-lived. In 2014, La Course presented by the Tour de France was created, a one-day circuit race around the Champs-Élysées on the final stage of the men's tour. Other formats have been experimented with since. 2 years ago, for example, there was a 2-day La Course that had a time trial and a summit finish, but last year the race went back to its one-day format. It wouldn't be the Tour if we didn't wrap up by discussing the Lanterne Rouge, an unofficial prize that honors the last place rider on the Tour's GC. In fact, in 2018, an American was the Tour's Lanterne Rouge. You may remember Lawson Craddock crashed in the middle of stage 1, the first stage of that year's tour, and broke his shoulder. He carried on, however, finishing every stage within the time limit and ultimately finishing the tour in Paris 3 weeks later.